Howdy, hello, and welcome to yet another fantastic episode of the Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast. On tonight's adventure, we will be taking a deep dive. We will be discussing the black and white episode Facing Fear with Eyes Wide Open. It is the 32nd episode of the season. And I, of course, am one of your hosts, Dougie Fresh. And joining me, as always, is my deep blue brother, Professor Chris G. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I am great, my friend. How are you doing?
You know, I'd be a lot better if I nailed that opening. Nobody heard that because you do a good job putting this together.
I know. Nobody ever hears our glitches, right, audience?
One time.
That one time shit got through, and then we didn't hear the end of it. But yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm over here. I'm chilling. I guess for everyone on the Patreon, at least, Happy New Year, everyone. I mean, I know you're hearing this probably in February on the free feed, but on Patreon, this is our very first episode that we are throwing out for 2023, bro.
Damn.
I know. I can't believe we are going on 3 years of consistent podcasting for this podcast. And we just finished our movie premiere, so I hope everybody enjoyed it, and I hope everyone, if you didn't hear the whole thing, the full thing is up on Patreon, so just go ahead and go over there and subscribe. And if you just want to listen to it just for that 1 month and we don't keep you for the long run, at least you'll be able to listen to it for that 1 month. But hopefully everything else that you get on the Patreon will keep you over there and keep you wanting more. So thank you for everyone for the positive feedback, even though I haven't seen it yet because it's not released until next week as of this recording. But yeah.
We had fun recording it, though, so hopefully...
Yeah, we did. All 4 hours.
All 4 hours of it.
Yeah. And we did that back to back. First, originally, me and you, we were going to do 1 week or one half 1 week and then do our next recording the following week. But the way our schedules ended up aligning, we did that back to back, bro. And
we had an open couple of days, and you were like, well, we could kick this or we could just knock it out. And we're just kind of like, let's do it, because if we would have had to wait a week, we would have had to rewatch from where we cut off, and then that's just
silly.
4 steps on our end, quite frankly, and it was already going to be a long record as it was.
So, but yeah, thank you everybody for listening. As of right now, and I know you guys are listening to this in the future, so I'm sorry if news is already out, but it's not as of right now because we're recording this episode on December 13th. And I have officially, in both Scarlet and Violet, finished what I can do besides capturing every single Pokemon and completing the Pokédex. So the game's kind of slowed down a little bit for me. I am doing my grinding quite hard in the game to get everything that I need and getting these. And I'm really debating. Okay, I take that back. I've done everything but the legendaries in the temple. And I'm kind of trying to save that for when the DLC is getting ready to come out, so I have something to play up into the DLC, but it's getting harder and harder to not just go in both of these versions and just go and knock it out. But as of right now, I have not knocked that out, but I've done everything else. And there's literally nothing for me to do besides these weekly Terra events that they're doing, and they're getting ready to come back out with Charizard. as of right now. And yeah, people are like, well, Charizard was a few months ago. Yes, but again, this is December 13th. So,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I'm going to be able to capture Charizard for the first time in Scarlet because I have not caught him in Scarlet. I did catch him in Violet, but I will be officially able to do it in Scarlet this time. So I will be able to capture him this time instead of the little block that they put on there as of the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in anime news for the Pokemon series, again, remember people, this is the past. But as of right now, Go in the Pokemon series was finally able to encounter Mew for the very well, not the very first time, but encounter it to where he can like play with Mew. And man, they made this Mew to be like a little asshole, bro. And I'm gonna tell you, so they they were talking the whole it's a two-parter episode, and they're Go and the other people that he's traveling with into this cave for the Project Mew. They're all in there to go and finally find Mew. And one of the people are like, yeah, I've heard that Mew is very big on destruction. And other people say that Mew is just this little cute little Pokemon and it's very friendly and they've seen it a few times. And boy, this Mew was trying to play, but then ended up playing too hard to where it was basically destroying everything around it. And Go was the only one to go over to Mew and just say, Mew, Mew, thank you. And he was thanking him because it was Mew that made him want to become a Pokemon trainer ever since he saw Mew as a child. And that stopped Mew from all of its destruction. It brought everything back to life. It was KOing Pokemon 6-on-1, and it was just like, it was chaotic. That was a chaotic episode. And man, I know there was a new one this past Saturday, and according to what I've heard and read a little bit, my assumption's kind of correct that they're going to be focusing the show around Go as of the future for Pokemon instead of Ash. But I mean, that has not been confirmed because I have not watched that episode. I'm waiting for part 2 to air this upcoming Friday night, and I'm going to back to back those episodes.
You've been on that since the news came out that Ash finally won the league. You're like, okay, well now his turn to step back and let Go have the run.
Yeah, I mean, and they don't do this here in the US. I mean, obviously we're being spoiled by Netflix and the big drops that we have every single time that they do drop episodes on Netflix. But in Japan, at the very end of their episode, they have a next time on Pokemon or Pocket Monsters. And they give like a 30-second preview. And from what I gathered from that preview, Go is saying that he wants to go on his very own journey, and he's talking to his sister, and his sister's like, "Well, have you broke the news to Ash yet?" And he's like, "No, I haven't. I haven't broke the news to Ash yet, but I'm going to. I'm going to." And then they just stopped the preview. And I know it's a two-parter episode, so I was like, okay. I'm not going to be left on a cliffhanger because I'm sure something's going to happen at the end of part 1. So I'm waiting, and I only have what 3 more days left until I can view that episode. So hopefully it's more than a two-parter, but I know at least it's a two-parter. What do you think?
I don't really have an opinion. Like I said, I haven't seriously watched it in years. I've just kind of you catch little bits and bobs on the periphery. You send me stuff every once in a while. Yeah. I mean, I might peek in when stuff with Ash gets serious, when that stuff finally gets over here.
Dude,
I know that,
I'd watch the tournament. I know it's probably maybe six to eight episodes of that when it comes over here to the US. I would sit down and actually watch the tournament. The tournament, because that's what going through these episodes with you. I've noticed your favorite episodes are the episodes that have like a lot of action. Because I mean, why the hell are we not here? Why the hell are we here watching Pokemon if we don't like the action? And
right.
I think you will thoroughly enjoy those because they are action packed episodes, and they're a lot more in depth than the Pokemon League that we just covered. What the beginning of this year or ending of last year at this point. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, when it comes over here on Netflix, I would go over there. I mean, you have Netflix. I mean, if you have extra time to watch it, or maybe me and you can throw up on the Patreon. Maybe me and you can review the English version of just the battle, going through it as it's premiering here in the U.S. So
There you go. Make content out of it. There you go.
yeah. So all right, but other than that, anything else that you want to add before we jump on into any episodes, Doug?
Nothing that would be relevant to Pokemon.
All right. Well, today's episode is episode 691, episode 32 of the Black and White series, and it is called Facing Fear with Eyes Wide Open, or translated from Japanese, Gamagaru Maggyo, Battle at the Waterside. And this episode premiered May 9th, 2011, and here in the States, September 10th, 2011. So, yeah, then we're getting on up there in this episode. So, are you ready to go and jump on into this one? Because it was this one or the Kanto one, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna end the year kind of on a good note. Well, I guess not really, because I mean we're doing Kanto next, and that's we're gonna record that in 2 weeks. Ah, shit.
Well, the important thing is we're getting this one done, and this was the much better of the two choices we had, and then we're taking our little break for Christmas, which y'all won't notice because y'all are still getting content because we're good. We're good like that, and
For real.
but yeah, you called and you're like, well, we've got the Kanto, which I can't remember. It's not great. It's better than it's the it's Tracy and his site. It was Tracy and his Scyther.
Yes.
Or it was this one, and I was excited to do this one because this one is a direct continuation from the last Black and White episode, which was Ash and Trip's third battle. Because that's when Trip was taking pictures, and he was like, Oshawott has his eyes closed during Aquajet. And Ash is like, we'll work on that. And usually when he says that, it's something that doesn't come up until like 10 episodes later. But this one, they're like right in there.
Yep, it's right in there. Let's see. I just got concerned for a second that we were getting ready to have a movie come out, but no, we do not. Episode 697 is called Movie Time, Zora and the Legend of the Pokemon Knight. And I thought it was a Pokemon movie. I was like, wait a minute, we got a Pokemon movie coming on in a few weeks? No, we don't. It's just the name of the episode. So I was wiping my head. I was sweating for a second. I was like, we can't put two movies out back to back. I mean, if we have to, we have to, but damn. But all right, everybody. You guys are ready. I have the episode up and ready to run right here. Do you want to start this week, Doug, or you want me to go ahead and start this venture?
I can start this week.
Okay. Go ahead and start this week's episode, brother.
Not too bothered by it. So we start this episode with heroes looking at a very pristine body of water, shimmering blue, and plenty of trees and mountains in the background. And Iris is awestruck. Uh, and Silent, who apparently has forgiven Ash and Iris from essentially abandoning him last week. Because remember, that's how the episode ended.
Yes.
Poor Silent and his end sage, waiting for Ash and Iris to never show up. And from the way Silent's talking, it looks like he's more focused on lunch. And Iris is just happy to be at the Waterside, but you can tell that Ash has a determined look on his face because, as I stated a few minutes ago, he said that he was going to work with Oshawott to keep his eyes open underwater to help him control Aquajet. And, Iris, wants to kind of run around and blow off some energy before lunch. And Ash is just like supremely focused on the water.
Yeah, he's like,
and
no.
And I almost feel like I don't need to touch this flashback because we see the scene of Trip showing Ash his camera, and Trip's little underhanded comment of, well, it kind of makes your Oshawott special in a way. And
I hated that backhanded comment, but I mean, I guess that in a way, not Silent. Trip is kind of complimenting Ash without complimenting him, I guess.
Way to fall ass backwards into a special Pokemon, and you have no idea what actually is going on.
Yep, exactly.
And so Ash is like, me and Oshawott are going to do some training. And Iris is like, well, I can watch your other Pokemon while you have some one-on-one time with Oshawott, which is a nice thing to do because otherwise, his other Pokemon were just going to hang out in the Pokeballs because obviously he can't be taking them underwater with him. And then Silent's like, well, if you're offering a babysitting service, and he's like, you can watch mine too. And then
they all throw out their Pokemon.
And they go off and do whatever. And then Ash calls out Oshawott, and he's like, how about some special training? And Oshawott's like, fuck? Like, didn't you?
How
where
about,
were you?
How about that Snivy and Emoga spot, and they just like glared eyes at each other, and they're like, huh.
Don't forget, they're
like,
and
they're like, I don't like you.
You and I got beef, but this isn't our episode.
So, but yeah, and then right after that, we get the title sequence, and then we jump straight on into the episode. The narrator is talking about how they're breaking for lunch by the lake, which obviously we just saw that. And Ash is already in his swimming trunks with Oshawott, and they're getting their stretches in right before they're about to jump into this ice cold lake. And you see Iris running around with all the Pokemon, getting a little exercise in and a little bit of play. And then we kind of focus right in on Ash and they're still stretching and they're getting everything ready. And Ash is like, are you ready? He's like, today, what we're going to do is some special training in the water. And Ash was like, yeah, I'm ready. And goes and jumps right into the water, but jumps right on. Yep. And as he jumps in, he starts doing some backstrokes. And Ash is like, yeah, you're a good swimmer, no doubt, Oshawott. but there's a reason that your Aqua Jet always misses, and it's because you keep closing your eyes underwater. And Oshawott's like, huh? And Ash is like, and that's what we're gonna work on, okay? And Oshawott's like, oh no.
This is news to Oshawott, for goodness sake.
And Ash is like, he's like, I'll be holding on the whole time. So don't worry, Oshawott. Just relax slowly and put your face in the water. And Oshawott's like, okay. And he puts his face right underwater and he's holding his breath. Ash goes under and he's looking at Oshawott. Oshawott got its eyes closed. And he's like shivering as well. And Ash is like, he's like, what are you doing? I just told you to open your eyes. And he splashes up. Oshawott splashes up. I'm looking at Oshawott kind of like a baby here, Doug. It's kind of funny because when I'm looking at Oshawott, I'm seeing my daughter. Because I just went through with this past summer with her, and also with my son. My son not as much. It didn't take that much to do it. I mean, he was jumping in, but he wasn't holding his breath. He had his eyes open, but he kept his mouth open. He's like, and it was just getting all that water into his mouth. And that's kind of how I see Oshawott in this episode. And Ash is like, well, here's the thing. You can't keep your eyes closed when you're underwater. You're a water Pokemon. And water Pokemon can see underwater and they can breathe. He's like, but this time, we're going to do it together. Okay, little buddy? And Oshawott's like, And he's like, just keep your eyes wide open and look straight at me. He's like, are you ready? And Oshawott's like, yeah. He's like, 1, 2, 3. And they go right back underwater, and Ash opens his eyes. Oshawott again is just, and he's holding his breath for the life of him, and he has his eyes shut. And Ash is like, what are you doing? So he takes Oshawott by the eyelids while they're underwater, and he pinches his eyes open, which I don't know if that's safe to really do when someone has their eyes closed under the water. But he pinches Oshawott's eyes open. He's like, Oshawott, open your eyes. And Oshawott's like, no. And then Oshawott freaks out and shoots a water gun at Ash. And Ash goes flying out of the water and onto the land. Doug?
So I had a question about this Oshawott as I was thinking, because the way you were describing him, kind of like a toddler, learning to swim. This Oshawott that Ash has, that's the Oshawott from the lab, right?
Yes.
It followed Ash out, and then Ash caught him.
Yep.
So maybe that would explain it. Like it's not 100% pure. Like it wasn't a wild Oshawott. It was
maybe it
lab trained. I don't know.
Yeah, lab trained, and maybe it didn't really have the full blown exposure. I don't know. I mean, in my eyes, if I was a professor, and this is just me,
right?
I would.
It's your name, after all.
What's up? Oh, yeah.
Your name.
Yeah, it is my name. I am a professor. What are you talking about? But if I was a professor in the Pokemon world, what I would do is, yes, I would train these Pokemon that are hatching from eggs that I'm giving out to people as starters, but I would make sure that the mother or father is in the lab and able to help train its offspring. That is the word, right? Offspring? Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, it's offspring, and so it can learn how to do everything that it needs to do or needs to learn up until this point. But it doesn't seem like Oshawott really had that before leaving the lab and following Ash on his journey.
No, I kind of like you were saying, like it behaving like a toddler. It's almost like it doesn't know how to be an Oshawott, or how to be a water type Pokemon.
Yeah.
It understands that it does water moves, and it obviously it knows water gun. I mean, it just blasted Ash straight on the land. But like, just kind of thinking about the Pokemon that Ash acquired otherwise, I mean, none of them are exactly streetwise. I mean, maybe, not even, I was going to say, what came out of the egg? Scraggy.
Scraggy. Yes.
So, I mean, he doesn't really have a lot of like streetwise Pokemon, but this is like the first time. It's like in Kanto, like obviously his Squirtle was the leader of the Squirtle squad. Obviously, he picked up his knowledge from the streets, so he didn't really have to deal with getting Squirtle to open its eyes or not hold its breath, or because I didn't even realize that Oshawott was holding its breath.
Yeah, it just had its mouth just I'm gonna hold my breath.
I was more focused on the eyes. I didn't even notice it was holding its breath too. So this poor thing, it's almost like it hasn't seen water. I mean, it did do that training session with Don George. That was another controlled environment.
Yeah.
And it still, I mean, it learned Aqua Jet, but it didn't learn to control it. Like, we're going to teach you how to throw a curveball, but we're not going to teach you how to locate it,
Exactly.
So Ash gets knocked clean out of the water, and he's poor kid. It's not even 4 minutes into the episode. He's already got the anime eyes. And we go over to Iris with everybody's Pokemon, and we are playing like some informal volleyball and Emolga jumps up and grabs the ball and just gets this mischievous glint in its eye, just chucks it at Snivy, and Snivy's like, oh, and hits it back at Emolga with a Vine Whip. Obviously, it kind of goes astray, and it's heading straight for poor Dwebble, who was just minding his own business. And in an effort to protect himself, he throws his claws up. Well, Dwebble claws versus rubber ball, the Dwebble claws are going to win every time. I hate to tell you.
Yeah.
And
pops the ball.
Iris is like, well, it looks like it's game over. And Pansage is like, son of a bitch. And poor Dwebble is kind of feeling sad, but he's like, I wasn't going to let it hit me in the face. And that's kind of what Iris says. She's like, it's not your fault, Dwebble. And you see Scraggy is kind of scrounging, and he comes across a cluster of funguses, and they look like Pokeballs.
Yes, they do.
Or, at the very least, stickers of Pokeballs. And Scraggy's like, oh, what's going on here? And if this was Ash, obviously, he would have whipped out his Pokédex, and we would have found out
exactly
that they were. And we would have gotten two paragraphs about fungus and how they're dangerous in the wild and how X, Y, and Z. But they all kind of look up in unison, and Scraggy's like, I might be outnumbered, and the fungus start to kind of shimmy, and Scraggy takes that as kind of like an insult, like, oh, you're gonna shake your hips at me, I'll show you. And he throws a massive headbutt towards the lot of them, and the fungus goes scattering like bowling pins, and they land in a heap. And they're like, oh, you're going to throw a headbutt. Oh, you're going to throw a headbutt. And Scraggy's like sticking his tongue out, and he's like, eh. And the fungus all jump up in unison And they're like, oh, and
The fungus sent out a stun spore and completely paralyzed um freaking Scraggy.
and all the other Pokemon go running over because they hear a commotion, and of course, right as Silent comes twirling into the scene with a tray and says it's lunchtime, um, all the Pokemon are gone, and we see Scraggy is in a little scrap with the funguses, and the fungus group together, and they do a collective stun spore, and they get everybody.
And even the Pokemon that shouldn't have even been having to have worried about this, but all of them, just a big cloud of smoke. Like think of a coughing using smog attack, and it's just covered all the Pokemon.
And it's in trouble because they get the telltale Pokemon red line under the nose, or is it across the? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's where we leave that, and we go back to Ash and Oshawott in the water, and Ash is just like, "Come on, Oshawott, keep your eyes open." And Oshawott is he's just not having. He's like, "Nope, don't want to do it. I've gotten this far. I'll be all right. I'm fine. I'll evolve, and maybe then I'll open my eyes. And I'll be all right." And Ash is like, "Come on, one more time." And then we hear Silent screaming for Ash. And then Iris is like, something's happened to Pikachu and the others.
So Ash runs on over at this point, and he sees all the Pokemon just laid out. And Ash is like, what the hell happened here? He's like, I left you guys with my Pokemon for 5 minutes. No, he didn't say that, everybody. But
he could have.
But he looks over at Silent, and of course, with Silent being the young adult, he's like, those fungus shot poison spores at everybody. And now I'm afraid that they're in really bad shape. And Ash is like, fungus. And of course, he grabbed his Pokédex out of nowhere. I don't know where the fuck he got it because he just got out of the water.
Well, he's still in his swim trunks, so that kind of implies that he had the Pokédex in his pocket, which I would call bullshit.
I mean, they did have Skype before we knew anything about Skype. So I mean, maybe it's waterproof.
It could be.
Yeah, maybe they're in the year 2023. But he opens the Pokédex, and it's like, Fungus, the mushroom Pokemon. Fungus releases poisonous spores to repel anyone who tries to catch him. For unknown reasons, they resemble Pokeballs. And then all the fungus. And it's funny, we find out how they walk. I mean, they don't really walk, they roll. So they were in like a little pyramid on top of one another when they threw out all of the poison. And then they jumped off of each other and they landed on top of their head where the Pokeball is, and they just rolled away. They're like, all right, we're done here. So all the fungus just rolls away. Silent realizes that he has no antidotes for the Pokemon to cure them of poison. And he's like, we could go to the Pokemon Center, but I'm afraid there isn't a center within miles of here. And all of them are just looking down, and Ash's like, man, Pikachu. And Iris comes up with the bright idea, and she's like, I'm wondering if there's any Romeo weed anywhere around here growing in the lake. And Ash's like, what is that? He's like, right. He's like, if you use it to make tea, it'll neutralize the poison within the Pokemon. Silence, like, he's like, you know what? I'll do a search here on my tablet. So he looks in there and finds that there are 4 spots inside of the lake that Ash and Oshawott were just swimming in, and that there's some Romeo leaf in there. So Ash is like, all right, then we can go. Me and Oshawott can go over there and get some Romeo leaf. And Silence coming over with Ash to go and get the Romeo leaf from the bottom of the lake because he has basically he has Google Maps
Right.
on his little tablet. Doug?
Right. So we go back and we go into the surrounding forest area surrounding the lake, and Ash is like, it seems like we've been walking forever. How much further? We've got sick Pokemon back there, and Silence tracking it on his tablet, and like we're very close, and he's just tracking, and Silence like, aha, here, and Ash is like, I don't see nothing, and then we kind of get like a Pokédex entry. He's like, it says Romeo weed grows in crevices
Inside of the lake.
Between rocks on the bottom of the lake. So like right there, if you're paying attention, your ears immediately perk up and you're like, uh-oh. And Ash is like, well, that's just no problem. I'll just swim down and get him. And
that's when,
of course,
Silence like, you won't be able to get it because you're too big and the crevices are very small.
Ash is like, oh shit. And we have a flash, not really a flashback, but we basically have like a visual representation of what Silent is saying. And he's like, people used to use water type Pokemon to specifically gather the Romeo weed. And no problem, I just happen to be holding a water type Pokemon. And the look that Oshawott gives when he looks at me, oh, me? And he's like, I got Oshawott. He holds him out like Simba, and Oshawott's just like, I don't think I like the sound of that. And
not at all.
His eyes kind of go big, and he kind of gets a squiggly mouth, and Silence like providing more exposition. He's like, the narrow crevices are going to make it very difficult to see. More hammering in the fact that you're going to need to be able to open your eyes, whoever you send down there.
Exactly.
And Ash has like immediate confidence in Oshawott, even though in the time that they've been over there practicing, he's been unwilling to even open his eyes with Ash holding his hand. And Ash is like, oh, he's got this. It's a cinch. It's like, I can... Jesus Christ, I forgot about this part. He's like, I'm going to pull on Oshawott's ears, and he, like, demonstrates. Yeah, he's like, I can guide.
Yeah, he's like, I can guide him. He's like, when I need Oshawott to go right, I'll pull on his right ear. When I need him to go left, I'll pull on his left ear. Since he can't see underwater. And
damnedest thing I've ever heard.
I know, but I mean, hey, he's not done training his Oshawott yet, so it's the only thing with all the sick Pokemon back there. So Oshawott and Ash, I want one of these things, and I know that they're not real, but it's a good idea. The little red thing that he always puts in his mouth when he goes and dives underwater. He has no tank, no nothing, but he can breathe with this little tiny thing in his mouth in the water. I want one of these. But he puts it in his mouth and he's like, all right, Oshawott, are you ready? Oshawott's like, well, about that.
Do I have a choice?
And Ash is like, well, here we go. And he jumps into the water, and Oshawott is all nervous, and Ash is Ash literally gets on Oshawott's back and has Oshawott swim under the water while he cannot see, and he's pulling on his ears, and he's just going and going. And Silent's like, man, I hope they know what they're doing out there. So we go right back to Iris, who's with all of the sick Pokemon, and all the Pokemon are just in so much pain. All because Scraggy wanted to freaking headbutt and boss around some wild Pokemon.
And go off by himself.
Yep.
And, Iris is doing her best and making the tea. And, well, it's not, we find out that it's oranberry juice. I kind of assumed it was tea, but what the fuck. And she's like, this isn't going to help, this isn't going to stop the poison, but this will give you energy to kind of help you at least feel better. And, Ashew's, drinking it down, and poor guy. And she's like, I hope they get back soon with the Romeo weed. And we focus in on Pikachu, and he's laying there with a cloth over his head and a leaf on his stomach. And like I say, he's got the telltale red line over his nose. And he's just like, this is bullshit. I want to die. Because we've all been there.
Yes, we have.
I mean, you just get sick and you're just like, fuck everything. And we go in and we see Ash and Oshawott diving down deep, and this is ridiculous.
He is pulling on Oshawott's ears, but as he is pulling on Oshawott's ears, of course, there's something in the water to stop him from getting the Romeo leaf. And what's in the water? None other than the wild Politoed from the last episode that Trip was not able to catch. So now he is out for revenge. And Politoed is...
Oh my God, I didn't put that together. It's the same Politoed he landed on.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So... the Politoed is like, yeah, I'm going to mess with him. And then he turns around and sees a bunch of temples in the water, which is the pre-evolved version of him. And he tells all the temples, he's the one that landed on top of me, and he's one of the guys that tried to capture me. Let's get him out of this water because he's trying to take what's ours. And all the temple are like, and they're like, and they start swimming. All the temples start swimming up. Ash is swimming down, and he's swimming further, and he's swimming further. And he looks, he's like, huh? Over there. And he looks into the crevices of one of the rocks that's towards the bottom, and he just peeks his head in. He's like, that's it. And he sees a little bit of Romeo leaf, and then all the temples starts coming up towards Ash. And they just start coming in to try to tackle Ash. And Ash gets out of the way, leaves Oshawott at the bottom of the water, and the temple miss, but this time they're not going to miss because they're coming back, and they're coming hard. And the Ash is like, Oshawott, open your eyes. You need to dodge them. And Oshawott's like, I can't. And all the temple just come in and just like, whoop, bam, 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 bam. He literally gets tackled by at least 12 different temples. And then they surround Oshawott and do some type of water pulse inside of the water and just blast Oshawott. And Ash looks down and he's like, are you okay, Oshawott? And what do you think? Oshawott is over here
question.
is dizzy, and he's confused from the move that they're using inside of the water. And he's like, I don't know what's going on because my eyes are closed, Doug.
And Silent's just watching all this happen from the shore, and he's just seeing jets come popping up, and he's like, what in the world's going on down there? How is this so involved just to get Romeo weed? And we get
Could you imagine seeing that from the shore?
yeah, unfortunately I think my first response would be to take my phone out and start videoing. I'm because I don't know what else I could do. And we get the who's that Pokemon, and thankfully it's Fungus, although I think by virtue of the subject of the episode, I would rather it was either Palpitoad or
Temple.
Temple. But it's but I guess Fungus did start all this, so I guess that makes sense.
Yes.
And we come back from that break and we see Iris is watching the Pokemon, and she hears a rustle on the leaves, and she's like, "I hope everything's okay." And did they move closer to the water?
I see that they did draw her a little closer to the water. I'm going to say no, because I don't think Iris is going to move all the poison Pokemon, but maybe this is just a different angle that we're seeing, because last time we were looking at her from the back, and now we're looking at her from the side.
Okay. And I guess we didn't really get a perspective shot, but I was assuming that she was a bit further away, but yeah, I think you're right. She's not going to move everybody. It's like, okay, I know you're poisoned, but come here and walk with me. And she's looking off in the distance, and then we go back down, and we see that Oshawott is still struggling to open it. Well, he's not. He's just looking around blind, and he's just completely surrounded by Temple. And they're just like, we're going to get you. And I mean, they're just basically talking shit on him. And, Ash is sitting there kind of helpless. I mean, he still looks dumb, but what is he going to do?
Oshawott tries to use Razor Shell against these Temple, but he's unsuccessful.
Just swinging blind.
Yes.
And, obviously the Temple, they're almost laughing at him because they're just like, oh, this is, dodging practice, basically. And there's like no threat, and just get some exercise in. And Ash is like, you gotta open your eyes. This isn't gonna do anything if you can't see. And he's just like, trying to give him. He's like, you have to do it. The Pokemon on the land are depending on you. And Oshawott, you can see him start to struggle, and he kind of cracks his eyes a little bit.
I felt so bad right here, because he's about to open his eyes, and then what happens to him, Doug?
He just gets blasted from every direction with more water gun. And, we see Silent's perspective, and we see another, just bunch of jets shooting up to the surface. And Silent's like, what in the hell? And Oshawott, he's holding his Razor Shell in front of him, and he's just like, this is bullshit. And he's like, come on, Oshawott, you're almost there, just focus. And Oshawott, he's got his Razor Shell ready, and he's struggling to open his eyes, and the Temple are loading up to fire again, and he's struggling, and he opens his eyes a crack, and they all go for Bubble Beam, all 13 of them together. And he's like, Oshawott, you're about to get it. And right before the bubbles make impact, he opens his eyes, and it's like this samurai moment. He's got his Razor Shell cocked, and he's just he's getting ready to phase down all these Temple, and the Temple realize they're in trouble, and they start shaking their heads. They're like, no, we weren't ready. And he's like, all right, now Oshawott Razor Shell. And the Temple scatter, because they're like, oh, he fixed his one weakness. And Ash comes down. He's like, you did it. And Oshawott puts his shell away. He's like, I knew it. And it's like, if you knew it, why didn't you do it, before everybody? Anyway, because they got to fill 20 minutes. That's why.
And it's at this point that Ash and Oshawott start swimming back up to shore. And as they're swimming up, Palatoad is looking on, and he's like, oh, well, gosh. He's like,
never send a temple to do a Palpatoad's job.
Yeah, for real. I like that. But he looks down at a Stunfisk, the one Pokemon I hate fighting in Pokemon Go. Oh my gosh.
Oh, really?
Dude, because it's a Pokemon that gets its like its superpower, like its combat move, like really quick, like it's like 3 taps, like pop pop pop, and then it's able to like shoot off its like superpower in the game. It's like one of the fastest Pokemon, but it's not the strongest, but it's the fastest, and one of the fastest. And I just hate fighting these things. But yeah, in the show, he looks down at Stunfisk, and he's basically telling Stunfisk, all right, these temples wasn't able to do the job, but I know you're able to do the job, so don't let me down, Stunfisk. And Stunfisk is like, yeah, I gotcha. So Stunfisk starts swimming back up, and it's an electric fish Pokemon. So, of course, it sends off a thunder shock right over to Oshawott and Ash in the water, and we get a view of Silent.
Silent, he's really messing up by not having his phone ready or something.
For real, because Silent must know something's going on, because he saw a whole bunch of water shooting up, and now he sees a big glowing of electric power in the water, and he's like, what's that? And then out comes Ash screaming with Oshawott, and Ash's like, ah! And he falls right onto the land right in front of Silent. And Silent just looks right down at him, straight face and all, and goes, are you all right?
Yeah, no, we planned to jump out like that. I'm a cricket. And Ash is like, boy, if I didn't have Oshawott, I would have been in big trouble.
For real.
And he's like, I got zapped, though, and Silent should have said no shit. I saw, and we see Stunfisk jump out and land on a lily pad, and no, it doesn't land. It lands in the water, and it's kind of and Silent's on it right away. He's like, that Stunfisk must have been the reason you got shocked down there. And Ash is like, oh, new Pokemon, huh?
It's Pokédex time. It's a Stunfisk, the trap Pokemon. Stunfisk.
Oh, it's a trap Pokemon. It hides itself in mud. That's where I got distracted. Yes. It delivers electric jolt when its prey touches it. And it says it smiles the whole time, so it has a ball as it's torturing these poor people, and
for real,
and Silent's like, that is a dangerous Pokemon.
And he's asked like, why did you do that? And Stunfisk just goes right back under the water, and Ash is like, man, now how are we gonna get any of that Romeo weed with that Stunfisk in there? And Oshawott's like, man, I'm defeated. I'm useless. And Silent's like, just leave that Stunfisk to me. He's like, because it's now fishing time. And he takes out what looks like a pen, but it's not a pen. And he undoes it and does the cap, and he like flicks it out, and it becomes a big old fishing rod with a Silent bobble
lure,
with a Silent lure on the tip of it. And he's like, it's time to fish. And Ash is like, wow. He's like, now get moving, Silent. He's like, with pleasure. And he just whips out the reel into the water, and he goes in to catch this stunfisk, and he's like, there's something wrong here. He's like an out of place ingredient in a tired and true recipe, in a tried and true recipe. He's like, but soon that out of place ingredient will be history, and we will savor the feast of joyous conquest. And he starts reeling it in. He's reeling it. He's like, I got a bite, success. And he all of a sudden he whips it out of the water, and you see the stunfish just come flying out. He's like, Silent's like, you are all mine. And Stunfisk is like, ah. He's like, oh, it's you again. Silent's like, mission accomplished. And Ash is like, oh, this is great. But of course, with only 6 minutes left in the episode, we have to close everything out with Palatoad. And Palatoad is like, all right, I can't send anybody to do my work, so I'm just going to go and do it myself. So Palatoad jumps out of the water and right onto a lily pad. And Ash pulls out his Pokédex. He's like, a Palatoad? You don't remember
Didn't
him?
we just... He did this.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, no, he didn't pull out his Pokédex on Palatoad in the last episode.
No, because it was running away, and he only would have been able to get the backside of it.
Yep. But the Pokédex says Palatoad, the vibration Pokemon. Vibration. Palatoad's long, sticky tongue is used to capture prey. It lives both on land and in the water. And Doug, I'm going to hand this part over to you as Palatoad is about to do its licking power.
So it throws its tongue out, it whirls around, and it throws like mud bombs.
Mud slap.
Okay, see. Mud slap towards Ash, Oshawott, and Silent. And they're like, oh my god. And Stunfish takes the opportunity to launch itself in the air. It still has Silent's lure in its mouth, and it throws out its own mud slap, and Silent gets knocked back, stays on his feet, still has the fishing rod. He's like, you two are friends. You're in cahoots. And he's like, Ash, focus on the Palpitoad. I'll handle Stunfish because I'm still in its mouth. And you know,
Silent starts whipping around Stumpfisk in the air, doing a tornado with the fishing rod. And now it's Ash and Oshawott's turn to battle Palatoad, and Oshawott doesn't seem like it's like ready at first, and then all of a sudden it opens its eyes. He's like, you know what? I got this. And Palatoad is like, what? And Oshawott's like, on second thought, I'll let Pikachu handle this. Oh yeah, Pikachu's poisoned. Shit. Doug.
And Ash like pulls out the card of, the others are counting on you, Oshawott, and he's like, I bet now I'm brave. And he has Oshawott attack first with a water gun, and Palpitoad counters with Hydro Pump, and obviously Hydro Pump's going to dominate a water gun.
Yep.
And Oshawott gets knocked back. He does a freaking. I mean, he's out. I mean, he does a freaking header into the ground. And for like the third time in the episode, Ash stupidly says, Oshawott, are you okay? No, he's fine. He's got a concussion, but you know. And Oshawott stands up. He's got mud on his face. He takes it off, and now he's pissed. And Ash tells him to use Razor Shell. And Oshawott goes to swing, and Palpitoad takes in air, and he launches out with a supersonic. He's confused, and you know Oshawott's holding his ears. And he's like, "This is the worst pain ever." And comes in and Silent's like, he's getting ready to use Mud Shot. He's changing his attacks so quick. And all this time, and I just have to applaud this because all this as Silence is like shouting out like play by play, he's got the freaking Sunfisk and he's just giving him the old Cesaro swing, and um, Palpatine bombards Oshawott with the mud slap, and Oshawott weeble wobbles, but he doesn't fall down, and
now
and he
it's time
shakes
for
it off.
the Aqua Jet.
And Ash is like, boy, that Palpatoad's strong. I think this is over. I'm going to catch it. And he's like, well, Oshawott, it's now or nothing, or it's all or nothing. He's like, use your Aqua Jet. And we see Oshawott get ready, and of course we do the telltale zoom in. We see that its eyes are shut, so we know it's not going to end well. And Ash is happy. He's like, this is going great. And then obviously Oshawott just goes foink and, completely curves, and Palpatoad counters with Mud Slap, and he meets Oshawott basically in midstream, and Oshawott's looking around like, I don't see what's happening. I don't see what's happening. My eyes are shut. Remember, I'm having that problem. And and now Ash knows that his eyes are shut. And he's like, you open your eyes like when you use Razor Shell to fend off the temple. And I was like shouting. He's like, I know you can do it. I believe you.
Open your eyes. Just like before when you were back in the lake. And Oshawott's like, oh, yeah, just like I was in the lake. And he remembers opening his eyes right before the bubble beam from all the temple. And he's like, oh, I can do it. So Ash is like, now. And he opens his eyes, and as soon as he opens his eyes, he sees all the mud shots coming in at him, and he dodges every single one of them. I believe there was like 4 or 5 of them. And then Palpatine is like, oh, crap. And then Palpatine gets full-blown Aqua Jet right in the face. And Palpatine is just flying back, and Oshawott just lands right on top of a lily pad, and Palpatine is knocked out on another lily pad, and Oshawott's like, yeah, I did it. And it's at this time Silent is like, it's time to wrap things up here. So he finally lets go of Stumpus that he's been making dizzy, and
for like 5 minutes.
For real. Ash throws a Pokeball over at Palpatine and catches it on the lily pad. Silent throws a Pokeball at Stunfisk and captures it. And both Pokeballs are rocking at the same time. And it's at this point, boom, and it captures it. But we get the good old red light on the Pokeball for Ash, because Ash has 6 Pokemon already in his party, so he cannot use Palpitoad. Doug.
And even though this has happened in multiple times in multiple regions, when the Palpitoad Pokeball shrinks, he's like, what? And basically, Silent basically has to go through the explanation of, well, you're already traveling with 6. And then Ash looks at Silent and says, right. Like, fuck you. What do you mean, right? Looked at it like you've never seen a Pokeball before.
Like, how long have you been journeying at this point, Ash? You have 6 Pokemon.
But see, he's not used to keeping them all, you see. So
he gets a party of 6 and goes, okay, that's enough for this island.
That's enough. So we go back, we're wrapping up, and he's like, oh, right, every other Pokemon around here is sick. So he's like, Oshawott, it's up to you to go get that Romeo weed. He's like, you've got this. You're a master. And Oshawott goes down, and he's just he's got a smile on his face, and his mouth is open. So, I mean, he realizes he's a water Pokemon, and he finds that crevice, and he finds the weed, and he shimmies his way in there, and
he gets.
We cut to Iris with a full pot of tea, and she's like, "Everybody, line up." Oshawott finally brought the, well, not, she didn't say finally, but she's like, "Oshawott brought the Romeo weed. This medicine's going to help you feel better." And Sage takes it, and Snivy, Dwebble, Pikachu. Good for them not doing Pikachu first. I feel like that would have been the easy thing.
Yeah.
And the music reaches a swell, and
all the Pokemon are healed.
And then we cut, and then everybody's just running around. Everybody's happy. Even Snivy and Emolga are running side by side. Iris is like, "Boy, that medicine really did the trick. Everybody looks great." And
that's basically the end of the episode. All the Pokemon start playing with each other, and they congratulate Oshawott on successfully using Aqua Jet, and then the narrator takes us out.
I like the scene of all the Pokemon kind of coming back together, and I mean, you can kind of infer that they're saying thank you to Oshawott in their own language.
Yep.
And Oshawott's like, "Oh shucks, little old me, all shucks," and and yeah, that's basically it.
So yeah, that's it. So Doug, I mean, I know we didn't do the Kanto episode, which I guess this was the better of the two. Just rewatching this, so what would you give this episode out of 5 stars? Seeing how refreshing this episode ended up being.
I mean, would it be a stretch to give this episode a 4? I mean,
I would give it a 4.
I mean, we had 2 Pokemon catches.
Yes.
We had
story advancement.
We had story advancement. We had a storyline that basically lasted the whole episode. We had a satisfying ending. We saw 2 new Pokemon, at least, in Fungus and Sunfisk.
Yeah. And we saw Temple. Temple too.
We saw Temple. And we tied a bow on that rogue Palpitoad that I didn't even put together that was that same
Palpitoad that ran away.
Palpitoad. I was like, son of a gun. So yeah, I'm comfortable with 4 here for sure.
I would go about a 4 as well. So I'm gonna meet you. I'm gonna meet you right there and go, yeah, this is a solid episode, solid advancement. I would not call this episode a filler episode at all. So yeah, I'm comfortable giving that that episode a 4. So yeah, I'm good.
Sweet.
So other than that, I know people are waiting for the end of this episode. They're like, "Where's the code, everybody?" I don't have a code this week. I mean, I do, but I have not opened a Pokemon pack to give it to you this week. So you'll most likely get it on next week's episode. Sorry, everybody. This is one of those episodes that don't have a code. So at this point, people are like, "Oh, well, damn it, I'm going to turn this episode off." But other than...
Joke's on you. We got you for the whole episode anyway. Yeah.
For real. So I definitely wasn't going to say that at the beginning of the episode. So, all right, everybody. Well, other than that, I feel quite satisfied with this. This is what a way to bring in 2023 here on the ePeep network here on Patreon. And if you're listening to this on the free feed, what a way to bring in February. but yeah, let's go ahead, Doug, and give everybody a good old goodbye.
All right, goodbye, Doug.
All right, and this is Professor Chris G letting all of you know that we do have a fun episode for you next week. At least we're going to try to make it a fun episode. So don't miss it, and we will see you again next week. Have a good night, everybody.